She hated bikers. Not because she didn't understand them, but because her son was one. She spent years begging him to stay off the highways, begging him to slow down, begging him to choose a life that didn't end at 70 miles an hour. Then one night, he got a call. A brother was stranded, in trouble, alone on the highway. He rushed to fix his bike, desperate to get there in time, and trusted the wrong mechanic. A man who took his money, rushed the repair, ignored the brakes, ignored the engine, ignored the consequences. 20 miles later, her son was dead on the asphalt. From that moment on, she blamed bikers. The noise, the speed, the brotherhood that always came first. Until she learned the truth. It wasn't the riders that killed her son. It was a quack mechanic who cut corners. So she made a promise over a grave. If she couldn't save her son, she would make sure no other rider died the same way. She taught herself to fix bikes. Quietly, carefully, for free. And years later, when another desperate biker was about to trust the wrong hands, she stepped in. What she didn't know was that the man she saved had already been saved once before, by her son, and carrying her son's final gift for over a decade. But this time, the debt would finally be repaid. 7 mechanics stood around a $1.3 million Harley-Davidson like surgeons around a flatlined patient. Each one had decades of experience. Each one had worked on bikes worth more than houses. And each one had failed. The engine was completely dead. No sputter. No click. Just silence. This wasn't some weekend rider's cruiser. This was a Hell's Angels legacy machine. Custom-built over 15 years, every part hand-selected, every modification documented like scripture. The kind of bike that doesn't just die, but it did. And in a garage full of the best mechanics money could buy, nobody could figure out why. Then the shop door opened. A woman in her early 60s stepped inside, wiping grease off her hands with a rag that had seen 1,000 repairs. She didn't ask permission. She walked straight to the bike, knelt down, and said 4 words that made every man in that room go silent. "I can fix it." What happened next wasn't just about a broken engine. It was about a promise made over a grave, a son who died too young, and the moment a mother's grief became every biker's second chance. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a repair story. It's about the day the ghost of a dead rider saved a living one. The Harley belonged to a man named Cole. Tall, weathered, mid-40s, with the kind of face that had seen more roads than most people see in a lifetime. He was Hell's Angels through and through. Not the Hollywood version. The real kind. The kind who showed up when your house burned down, when your family needed protection, when the world turned its back. His bike was an extension of that identity. A 1976 shovelhead frame rebuilt with a custom S&S engine, hand-painted tank with flames that seemed to move in the light, exhaust pipes tuned so perfectly they sounded like thunder rolling through a canyon. Every chrome piece had been polished by hand. Every bolt had been torqued to exact specifications. The seat was custom leather, broken in over thousands of miles. The handlebars were positioned exactly where his arms rested naturally after years of long rides. It wasn't just transportation. It was respect on 2 wheels. And now it was dead. No warning. No gradual decline. He'd ridden it to a meet 2 states over, parked it outside a diner, and when he came back out 20 minutes later, it wouldn't start. Completely unresponsive. He tried everything. Checked the kill switch. Toggled the ignition. Nothing. Not even a dashboard flicker. He had it towed back home, called in favors, brought in every top-tier mechanic he knew. First came Garrett, a guy who'd built racing bikes for professional circuits. He spent 2 hours going through the electrical system with a multimeter, testing voltage at every junction, checking grounds, inspecting fuses. Found nothing. Then came Luis, who specialized in vintage Harleys and could diagnose an engine by sound alone. He pulled the spark plugs, checked compression in all cylinders, tested the coils, examined the ignition timing. Everything was perfect. Numbers were exactly where they should be. Then Tommy, a former military mechanic who'd kept convoy bikes running through deserts and war zones. He went through the fuel system line by line, cleaned the carburetor, replaced the fuel filter, checked for air leaks in the intake, tested the fuel pump pressure. Still nothing. By hour 5, they'd brought in 2 more specialists. One focused purely on custom electrical work, the kind of guy who could rewire a bike blindfolded. The other had 30 years of experience with aftermarket performance parts and knew every modification trick in the book. They worked in tandem, tracing every wire, testing every relay, checking every sensor and safety switch. The bike should have been roaring, but it sat there like a corpse. Silent, stubborn, dead. 8 hours in, frustration had turned to confusion. Confusion had turned to something close to despair. Because for a man like Cole, this wasn't about convenience. It was about identity, about showing up, about being the kind of rider people could count on. He had a run scheduled for the next morning. A memorial ride for a fallen brother who died 3 years ago to the day. He was supposed to lead it, supposed to carry the flag, supposed to be the one who set the pace and held the line. And if he couldn't trust his own machine, what did that say about him? What did it say about his ability to lead, to protect, to honor the dead? The other mechanics had started packing up their tools. They'd given him every possible diagnosis, told him he might need to trailer the bike to a specialty shop 3 states away, told him it could take weeks, maybe longer. Cole just stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at the bike like it had betrayed him, like it had chosen the worst possible moment to fail. That's when she walked in. Her name was Evelyn. She wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't work at the shop. She didn't advertise. She didn't take appointments. But she'd been in the back office, dropping off some parts for a friend who ran the place, and she'd overheard the whole situation through the thin walls. At first, she tried to ignore it, tried to mind her business, told herself it wasn't her problem. But as the hours dragged on and she heard the frustration building, heard the desperation in Cole's voice when he talked about the memorial ride, something in her wouldn't let it go. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching these men, good men, skilled men, circle a problem they couldn't solve. And something in her chest tightened. Because she'd seen this before. She'd seen desperation. She'd seen a rider who needed his bike fixed right now, who couldn't wait, who trusted the wrong hands. And she'd buried the result. Her son's name was Danny. He'd been 23 when he died. Bright kid. Funny. The kind of person who could make you laugh even when you were furious with him. Loyal to a fault. He'd grown up around bikes, learned to ride young, fell in love with the freedom, the brotherhood, the code. Evelyn hated it. Not because she didn't understand, but because she understood too well. She saw the danger, the highway speeds, the close calls, the riders who didn't make it home, the funerals she'd attended for boys barely out of their teens. She'd begged him to stop, pleaded with him to find something safer, something that didn't involve 2 wheels and 70-mile-per-hour risks. Offered to help him pay for college, for trade school, for anything that would get him off that bike. He never did. And she'd learned to live with the fear the way mothers do. She'd learned to say goodbye every time he rode out, not knowing if he'd come back. She'd learned to sleep lightly, phone by her bed, waiting for the call she prayed would never come. She'd learned to hold her breath every time she heard sirens in the distance. But the fear wasn't what killed him. It was trust. One night, Danny got a call. One of his brothers had gone down 2 hours away. Bike trouble, stranded on a lonely stretch of highway, vulnerable. In biker culture, you don't leave a brother stranded. You don't wait until morning. You don't make excuses. You go. Danny didn't hesitate. He grabbed his helmet, his keys, fired up his Harley, and realized halfway to the garage that his brakes were spongy. He'd been meaning to fix them for a week. The pedal had been going soft, the response time getting longer. He'd noticed it, mentioned it to Evelyn a few days earlier, put it on his mental to-do list. But this was an emergency. His brother was alone, exposed, in a bad part of the state where being stranded after dark was dangerous. So he made a choice. He pulled into the first shop he saw, a small place on the edge of town. Cheap sign, single bay, paint peeling off the walls. A guy in a stained shirt who said he could do it fast. 45 minutes, he promised. Maybe an hour tops. Danny paid him cash up front. $75. Waited outside. Watched the guy work through the grimy window, seeing him move quickly, too quickly. The mechanic said it was done. Said the brakes were good to go. Danny tested them in the parking lot. Pressed the pedal a few times. They felt better. Firmer. He thanked the guy. Rode out. And 20 miles down the highway, doing 70 in the center lane, his brakes failed completely. The pedal went straight to the floor. No resistance. No bite. Nothing. He pumped it. Nothing. He downshifted, tried to engine brake, but he was going too fast. There was a semi in front of him. He swerved, hit a guardrail at full speed. The impact threw him 30 feet through the air. The bike tumbled, skidded, and caught fire. The engine seized mid-crash, metal grinding against metal, parts scattering across 2 lanes. Traffic stopped. People screamed. Someone called 911. Danny was alive when the ambulance arrived. Barely. He was conscious enough to ask if his brother was okay. Conscious enough to tell the paramedic his mother's name. He died on the way to the hospital, his heart giving out from the trauma, his body too broken to survive. Investigators found the brake lines barely tightened. The fluid reservoir had a hairline crack the mechanic never noticed or never cared about. The pads had been installed wrong, one of them backwards. The engine work was half done, missing bolts, safety checks ignored. The guy had rushed it, cut corners, took the money, and sent a kid to his death. When the police tracked him down, he said he didn't remember the job. Said he did hundreds of repairs. Said it wasn't his fault the kid rode reckless. He got a fine. 60 days in county. Lost his business license for a year. That was it. No manslaughter charge. No real accountability. Just a slap on the wrist and a record that would be sealed eventually. Evelyn didn't cry at the funeral. She stood there, silent, surrounded by dozens of bikers who loved her son, men and women in leather vests with tears streaming down their faces, engines idling in tribute, and she made a promise. No one else. Not one more. Not because of someone's greed or laziness or fake expertise. She would learn. She would make sure. And if she ever saw another rider about to make the same mistake her son did, she would stop it. So she taught herself, not how to build, how to fix what others broke. She bought manuals, watched repair videos until her eyes burned, spent hours in junkyards pulling apart wrecked bikes to understand how they failed. She studied failure points, stress fractures, or patterns. She learned to spot rushed work, dangerous shortcuts, the little signs that separated real mechanics from con artists. The way a bolt looked when it was under-torqued. The sound a brake line made when it wasn't seated properly. The smell of old fluid that should have been replaced. She started fixing bikes quietly. No shop, no sign, just word of mouth. Riders would hear about her, show up at her house at odd hours. She'd work in her garage, sometimes until 2 in the morning, making sure every bolt was tight, every line was secure, every part was safe. She didn't charge, didn't want recognition, didn't want thanks, just wanted to keep the promise. But she stayed away from the brotherhood itself. She didn't go to rallies, didn't attend memorials, didn't wear patches or ride in formation, didn't join the groups that gathered at Danny's grave every year on the anniversary of his death. Because every time she saw a leather vest, every time she heard an engine roar, every time she smelled oil and exhaust, she saw Danny. Saw him at 17 with his first bike, grinning like he'd found religion. Saw him at 20, riding out with his brothers, waving at her from the driveway, promising he'd be careful. Saw him in the hospital, tubes in his arms, a machine breathing for him, his face so pale it didn't look real. And it hurt too much. So she kept her distance, fixed the bikes, saved the lives, but never let herself get close. Never let herself care about the riders as people, just as problems to solve, machines to repair, numbers to keep safe. So when she walked into that garage and saw Cole's Harley surrounded by 7 exhausted mechanics, tools scattered everywhere, diagnostic equipment beeping uselessly, she knew. She knew what they'd missed. Because they were looking for complex problems. Electronics, sensors, computer modules, aftermarket complications. The kind of failures that required expensive equipment and specialized knowledge. And sometimes the worst failures are simple. She stepped forward slowly, her boots making soft sounds on the concrete. The mechanics looked up, confused. Cole turned. Garrett, the first mechanic, frowned. "Ma'am, we're kind of in the middle of something here." Evelyn didn't respond to him. She walked straight to the bike, knelt beside it, ran her fingers along the engine casing, feeling for heat signatures, for vibrations, for anything out of place. She checked the oil line, traced the fuel feed, examined the exhaust connection. Then she reached under the frame, near the back of the primary case, and pulled out a small relay switch buried in shadow. It was covered in road grime, corroded, stuck in the off position, a $12 part, easily missed if you weren't looking for it. If you didn't know, this specific custom build rerouted the safety relay to an uncommon position to make room for the upgraded alternator. She held it up to the light, turning it slowly. "This is your problem," she said quietly. "Relay's fused shut. Engine thinks it's a neutral lockout. Won't even try to turn over." The mechanic stared. Garrett shook his head slowly, almost embarrassed. "We checked the relays." "You checked the main ones," Evelyn said, her voice even, without judgment. "This one's tucked custom. Whoever built this bike rerouted it for clearance. You wouldn't see it unless you knew where to look. Unless you'd seen this exact mistake before." Tommy stepped closer, squinting at the part in her hand. "How the hell did you know that?" She didn't answer, just looked at Cole. "You need a replacement. I have one in my truck." Cole stepped forward. He looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. His voice was low, cautious. "Who are you?" She stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Someone who doesn't let bikes leave broken." She walked out to her truck, grabbed the relay from a toolbox in the bed, came back. The mechanics watched in silence as she installed it. She worked methodically, no wasted movements. Every connection checked twice. Every wire seated properly. She tested the resistance with a small multimeter she pulled from her pocket. Nodded when the reading came back clean. When she finished, she stepped back. "Try it now." Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he swung his leg over the bike, turned the key, and hit the ignition. The Harley roared to life like it had never slept. The sound filled the garage, deep and strong and perfect. The kind of sound that makes your chest vibrate. The kind of sound that means everything is exactly as it should be. The mechanics looked at each other, a mixture of relief and disbelief on their faces. Luis actually laughed, shaking his head. Tommy muttered something about missing the obvious. Cole sat there, hands on the grips, letting the engine idle, listening to it purr. Then he looked up at her. "What do I owe you?" She shook her head. "Nothing. That's not how this works." "It is for me." She turned to leave. Cole's voice stopped her. "Wait. What's your name?" She hesitated, felt the weight of all the years, all the repairs, all the nights she'd spent alone in her garage trying to make sense of the loss. Then she said it. "Evelyn." He didn't recognize it. Not yet. She walked out before he could ask anything else. But 2 weeks later, Cole came back. This time, he wasn't alone. He brought 5 riders with him. They pulled up to her house just after sunrise, engines rumbling in unison, the sound rolling down the quiet street like distant thunder. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Dogs barked, but the riders just shut off their engines and walked up to her door. Boots on pavement, leather creaking. When Evelyn opened it, still in her work clothes from an early repair job, grease under her nails, Cole was standing on her porch holding an envelope. Behind him stood the others. Iris, a woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her hair and a scar across her cheek from a crash years ago. Ramon, a stocky guy with kind eyes and grease permanently under his nails, a mechanic himself who understood what she'd done. Two younger riders she didn't recognize, both wearing patches that marked them as full members, all of them watching her with something close to reverence. "We asked around," Cole said quietly. "Found out you've been doing this for years. Fixing bikes. Saving lives. Not taking a dime." She crossed her arms, uncomfortable with the attention. "I don't want your money." "It's not money," he said. He handed her the envelope. Inside was a deed. Her house. Paid off. She stared at it, her hands trembling. "Your mortgage was 3 months behind," Cole said, his voice careful. "We took care of it. Called the bank. Paid the full balance. You own this place free and clear now." Her breath caught. She looked up at him, confusion and something close to anger in her eyes. "Why?" "Because you saved my life." She blinked. "I fixed your bike." "No," Cole said. "You saved my life. 6 years ago." He paused, his jaw working like he was trying to find the right words. Like he'd rehearsed this 100 times, but it still didn't come out right. "I went down hard. T-boned by a truck that ran a red light. I was 17. Stupid. Riding without a real helmet. Just some cheap half-shell that split like plastic when I hit the pavement. My bike was totaled. I was on the side of the road, barely conscious, bleeding from my head. I thought I was done. I remember thinking this is how it ends. Alone on the highway. Then a young rider stopped. He didn't know me. Had no reason to help. But he pulled off his helmet and put it on my head. Told me to stay awake. Told me I was going to be okay. He stayed with me until the ambulance came. Held pressure on the wound. Kept talking to me. Wouldn't let me slip under. I never got his name, but I remember his face." Cole pulled out his phone with slow, deliberate movements. Pulled up a photo. A candid shot from a ride 6 years ago. A group of bikers stopped at a diner, bikes parked in a row, everyone smiling, the sun setting behind them. And in the center, young and alive and grinning, was Danny. Evelyn's knees almost buckled. She gripped the doorframe. Her vision blurred. The world tilted. Cole's voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. "That was your son." She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was hearing. Cole stepped closer, his voice breaking just slightly. "I never saw him again after that day. The paramedics took me away. I was in the hospital for a week. Fractured skull. When I got out, I tried to find him. Tried to thank him. Asked around. But I was just a kid. Didn't have resources. Didn't know how to track someone down. And then, 2 years later, I heard he'd died. Heard it was a bike failure. Bad mechanic. Brakes gave out on the highway." He looked down, his hands clenched into fists. "I've been looking for a way to repay him ever since. Been carrying that debt for 6 years. Felt like I owed him my whole life. And then you walked into that garage 2 weeks ago. And when I heard your name, I started asking questions. Started putting pieces together. And I knew." Evelyn's voice came out as a whisper, barely audible. "He never told me he did that." "He wouldn't have," Cole said. "That's who he was. That's the code he lived by. Help first. Talk later. Never expect anything back. That's what you taught him, whether you meant to or not." Iris stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. "We're not here to replace him. We can't. But we're here to finish what he started. You've been protecting us for years. Keeping us safe. Making sure we get home to our families. Now we protect you." Ramon nodded. "You don't ride alone anymore. You're family now." Over the next month, they showed up. Not all at once. Not overwhelming. But consistently. Cole fixed her fence, the one that had been leaning for 2 years, dug new post holes, used concrete, made it sturdy. Ramon replaced her water heater when it started leaking, installed a new unit, wouldn't let her pay for parts. Iris brought groceries every Sunday, stayed for coffee, never pushed conversation, but was always there if Evelyn wanted to talk. The 2 younger riders, Tyler and Becca, repaired her roof after a storm, patched the shingles, cleared the gutters, made sure everything was sealed tight against the weather. And slowly, painfully, Evelyn let them in. Not because she stopped missing Danny. The grief was still there, sharp and constant. But because she realized something. He hadn't died because of the brotherhood. He'd died protecting it. And she'd been carrying on his work the whole time without realizing it. She'd been honoring him in the only way she knew how. By keeping his brothers and sisters safe. She started joining them for meals. Started attending a ride here and there. Not as a rider, but as someone who belonged. Started letting herself feel the community her son had loved so much. Started hearing the stories about him. The things he'd done that she never knew about. The lives he'd touched. And for the first time in 6 years, the weight on her chest felt just a little bit lighter. If you believe loyalty is stronger than death, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story isn't over yet. One evening, about 3 months after Cole had first come to her house, Evelyn was in her garage working on a carburetor rebuild when she heard raised voices outside. She wiped her hands on a rag, stepped out into the driveway, and saw a young biker, maybe 25, arguing with a man standing beside a mobile repair van. The van was beaten up, rust along the wheel wells, cheap decals peeling off the side that read, "Fast Fix Mobile Mechanics." The man had a toolbox that looked like it had been dropped 100 times, tools rattling loose inside. No organization. And the kid looked desperate. His bike, an older Sportster, was leaning on its kickstand, front brake rotor visibly warped, fluid leaking from the caliper. "I need it done tonight," the kid was saying, his voice tight, almost pleading. "I have to meet my chapter 2 hours north. They're in trouble. One of our guys got jumped. I can't wait until tomorrow. I need to be there." The mechanic shrugged, unimpressed. "I can do it in an hour. $100. Cash up front." Evelyn's chest went cold. The same words. The same promise. The same lie. She walked over slowly, her boots crunching on gravel. "What's wrong with your bike?" The kid turned, surprised to see her. "Brakes are shot. Rotor's warped. Pads are gone. Fluid's leaking. This guy says he can fix it fast." She looked at the mechanic. Looked at the van. Looked at the toolbox. Looked at the way he was standing, weight on one hip, impatient, already thinking about the next job. Looked at the kid's eyes. And she saw Danny. Saw the same desperation. The same loyalty. The same dangerous choice about to be made. "No," she said flatly. "He can't." The mechanic scoffed, straightening up. "Lady, I've been doing this for 15 years. I think I know how to replace brake pads." 15 years of what? Evelyn said, her voice hard. Cutting corners? Sending riders out with half-done work? Collecting cash and disappearing before the problems show up? The mechanic's face darkened. "You don't know what you're talking about." She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "Your van has no current inspection sticker. Your toolbox is missing a torque wrench, which means you're guessing on every bolt. And if you're telling this kid you can replace a warped rotor and rebuild a full brake system in an hour, you're lying. It'll take you 15 minutes and 4 missing bolts. That's how long it'll take before his brake line blows on the highway doing 70. The kid froze, his face going pale. "How do you?" "Because I've seen it before," Evelyn said, her voice quieter now, but no less intense. "I've buried the result. I've stood at a grave and watched them lower a coffin into the ground because someone like him took money and didn't do the job right." She turned to him. "Let me fix it. For free. And I'll do it right. I'll do it safe. But you have to give me 2 hours, not 1. The kid looked between her and the mechanic, uncertainty written all over his face. The mechanic started to argue, stepping forward aggressively. "You can't just..." Cole's bike rumbled up the street. Then another. Then 3 more. 5 Harleys. Engines growling low and threatening. Riders in full colors. They pulled up behind Evelyn in a perfect line, shut off their engines in unison, and just stood there, arms crossed, watching, silent. The mechanic saw the vests, saw the patches, saw Cole step forward, 6'2" and 200 pounds of barely contained anger. Saw the look in their eyes that said this wasn't a negotiation. He grabbed his toolbox, muttered something under his breath about crazy people, and climbed into his van. He was gone in 30 seconds, tires squealing as he pulled away. The kid looked at Evelyn, then at the bikers, then back at her. I don't understand. Who are you people? People who don't let brothers die on the highway, Cole said simply. Evelyn nodded toward her garage. Get your bike inside. I'll have you on the road in 2 hours. Safe. She spent the next 2 hours doing it right. New rotor, measured and installed with precision. New pads, properly seated and bedded. Bled the lines completely, twice, to make sure there was no air in the system. Checked the calipers for wear. Tested the master cylinder for leaks. Replaced the fluid reservoir because she didn't like the hairline crack she found. Torqued every bolt to spec, checking her manual twice. Cole and the others stayed. Didn't help. Didn't interfere. Just kept watch. Ramon brought the kid a sandwich and a bottle of water. Iris asked him about his chapter, about the brother who was in trouble, made sure he knew he wasn't being judged for the urgency. Tyler checked his tire pressure and oil level while Evelyn worked on the brakes. When she finished, she didn't just test it in the driveway. She took the bike for a full test ride, 5 miles down the highway and back. Braked hard 3 times at different speeds. Felt the response. Smooth. Strong. Immediate. Safe. She pulled back into the driveway and nodded. You're good. You'll make it there and back. The kid tried to pay her. Pulled out a crumpled wad of bills, everything he had. Please, let me give you something. She refused, closing his hand around the money. Keep it. You might need it up there. But you spent 2 hours. I made a promise, she said, cutting him off gently. Just promise me something in return. Anything. Don't ever trust someone who rushes a repair. Your brothers need you alive. Not fast. Alive. If something feels wrong, if someone's pushing you to accept work that doesn't sit right, walk away. Find someone who cares more about your life than your money. He nodded, his throat tight, emotion written all over his face. I promise. He rode off into the night, engine strong, brakes solid, and Evelyn stood there in her driveway, tools still in her hands, and for the first time in years, she felt like Danny was standing next to her. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a presence. Proud, at peace. Finished. Cole walked up beside her, watching the taillights disappear. You know he's going to tell that story for the rest of his life. She nodded. Good. Maybe it'll save someone else. You saved my life twice, Cole said quietly. Once when I was 17, and again 2 weeks ago when you reminded me what brotherhood actually means. She looked at him. Your bike was just a relay. It was never about the bike, he said. 3 months later, on the anniversary of Danny's death, Evelyn went to his grave for the first time in 2 years. She'd avoided it, couldn't handle the weight of standing there. But this time, she didn't go alone. Cole and the others came with her. Not to intrude, just to stand witness. To show her she wasn't carrying this alone anymore. She knelt by the headstone, traced her fingers over his name. And she told him about the bikes she'd fixed, the lives she'd saved, the promise she'd kept. Told him about Cole, about the kid with the Sportster, about the family she'd found and the people he'd loved. I'm sorry I hated them for so long, she whispered. I'm sorry I blamed them for losing you. But I understand now. You didn't die because of who they were. You died because you were exactly who I raised you to be. And I'm proud of that. She stood up. Cole handed her a patch. Custom made. It read, Danny's legacy. Ride safe. Ride home. We're making it official, he said. Every bike you fix, every rider you save, carries this. So they remember. So they know someone's watching out for them. She held the patch, her vision blurring with tears she'd held back for years. And for the first time since the funeral, she let them fall. What's your take on this? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. If this story resonated with you, hit the like and send it to someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more shocking videos like this, check out the previous videos on the channel. Because promises kept echo longer than engines ever will.